Welcome to This Week in Christian History, a podcast from the Center for Christian History at Mississippi College. The Center for Christian History is dedicated to expanding knowledge and understanding of Christian history. Our mission is to provide a scholarly, unbiased look at the events, figures, and movements that have shaped Christianity over the centuries. You can visit centerforchristianhistory.com for daily historical highlights. And each week on this podcast, we'll do a deep dive into key moments with Christian history's leading authorities. Also, be sure to check out our long-form historical series, The Christian History Chronicles, on our website. The next episode of the series is coming soon. First up on our list of historical highlights for the week is Peter Marshall, known and loved for his effectiveness as a Presbyterian minister, but even more so for his service to his country. Marshall was the chaplain for the United States Senate from 1947 until his sudden death on January 26, 1949. His wife Catherine wrote a biography about him entitled A Man Called Peter, which has since been adapted into a film. Next up on our list, and the subject of our deep dive, is the Walk to Canossa, a pivotal episode in the investiture controversy, which was the broader struggle between church and secular authority in medieval Europe. After being excommunicated by Pope Gregory VII for defying papal authority over the appointment of bishops, King Henry IV traveled in midwinter across the Alps to the fortress of Canossa in northern Italy, where the Pope was staying. There, the king famously stood barefoot in the snow for 3 days as a public act of penance, before the Pope agreed to lift the excommunication. Last up on our list of historical highlights for the week is Menno Simons. On January 30th, 1536, Simons, who was at the time a Catholic priest, renounced Catholicism. He was then rebaptized by Anabaptist leader O.B. Phillips. Simons went on to write extensively about doctrine and theology, and his work led to the formation of the Mennonite denomination. Today in our deep dive, Nick Walters, founder and director of the Center for Christian History, talks with Conrad Leyser of Oxford University's Worcester College about the Walk to Canossa.
Hello and welcome again to another edition of This Week in Christian History. And we are hanging out about a episode or an event that actually happened on January 28th, 1077, that involves church authority and papal authority, which is summed up maybe historically as known as the Walk to Canossa. And what does that mean? And what does that really, what is that all about? So to help us unpack all of that, we're so very pleased to have Dr. Conrad Leyser, who is with us as Associate Professor, Medieval History at Worcester College at Oxford University. And Dr. Leyser, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Please, my great pleasure. I look forward to
Absolutely.
this.
So let's kind of put this in context of where we are. There are, I guess, just like anything in history, it kind of depends on what you think is important from the story. And then very often somebody, nobody's looking up on Google today to see who the current Holy Roman Emperor is, right? Because they would be disappointed to find out there's not one, right? But we still have a Pope, and so who ends up writing the story at the end? Does the church or that, or who ends up pulling that together? We have just come out of really the Great Schism, right? Which has happened just a couple of decades before all of this, and so the idea of more and more of papal authority and having the final say-so on someone's soul, and I may be simplifying that in a way that's not fair, this fits right into all of that, right, to this discussion point. So that was way more of a question and a statement than it was than a question to do. But give us some background, okay? Give us an idea of kind of the setting of who Henry IV is, the Holy Roman Emperor, who is the current Pope at the time, Gregory VII, and give us a rundown on some of that.
Okay. Let's maybe start with the Holy Roman Empire,
Okay.
which is a kind of messy collection of kingdoms that the rulers of which the emperors, and they see themselves as kind of as Roman emperors. I mean, they counting back to when they what we would think of as the Roman Empire. Um, uh, in the Latin West, the last of the kind of fall of that empire happens at the end of the 5th century, 476. The Western emperor is deposed. In the East, the empire keeps going, comes to be known as Byzantium. In the West, there's then a gap until you get to Charlemagne, who big warlord conquests, gets himself crowned in Christmas Day 800 as Emperor of the Romans. And that's the point at which, as what we call the Holy Roman Empire, kind of kicks off. Um, uh, and yeah, with this idea of kind of who the big warlord in the West kind of recognized as an emperor by the Pope. Charlemagne's family keeps holding that title till the end of the 9th century, 888. Charles the Fat, the last legitimate member of that family, he has no legitimate heir. Then there's a gap. 10th century, 962, the kings of Saxony, so further east than has Charlemagne's center of power has been. They're the most powerful warlords in the West. They get recognized as Roman emperors. And so coming forward into where we're talking about today, the 11th century, it's the descendants of those 10th century Saxon Empire who are now the Holy Roman Emperors. And Henry IV, I mean, his dad dies when he's still a child. He's technically not yet been crowned emperor when at Canossa in the 1070s. He's King of Germany.
Okay.
That's his title. So he will be crowned emperor, but that's later. It's 1081 after we're done with Canossa. So say he has kind of power over a kind of number of Kingdom of Germany, Kingdom of Italy, some bits kind of west of the Rhine, just about. So it's a kind of umbrella collection of polities that he has to rule. And to be recognized as emperor, he needs the Pope to do that. Hasn't yet happened when in the bit that we're talking about. And we need to get back to his relationship with the Saxon nobility, which is just to put a pin is a key part of the story here. No, we don't need to go to that just this second.
Sure.
Right, that's him on one side.
Okay.
Meanwhile, you've got the papacy, which has, unlike the Holy Roman Emperorship, has seemingly an unbroken history from the 1st century through, as doubtless you are aware. But the Pope has, I mean, right until this moment, the Pope has basically been Bishop of Rome as a kind of local figure. We're not, this is just what's happening, and what's at play here is a shift from the church as a whole from being a network of local churches to a big trans-regional, trans-political corporation. The Pope, right up until this moment, is basically, as I say, still a local ruler. He doesn't have a lot of infrastructure. What's in play is a shift in his role. I mean, and Rome is a big city. There are loads of saint shrines. People visit Rome. And so there's a big tourism trade. But in terms of the church as an administrative structure, that's only just starting to take shape in this period. And what you've got from the second half of the 11th century onwards, in the so-called movement for church reform, is a bunch of people converging on Rome, convinced of two things. One is that the clergy need to operate according to new uniform standards of behavior, and two is that the Pope will be head of that new clerical or newly kind of burnished clerical corporation. And that's what's in play here. Now, Gregory VII has been in Rome since the 1050s, before he becomes Pope in 1073. I mean, his given name is Hildebrand. He's a Roman who's been for the past two and a half decades really at the center of this so-called kind of very ambitious reforming movement.
Okay.
Last thing to say before we go to
No, there's a
we
lot.
assume there is a lot. We assume that this reforming clergy, reforming church movement is going to clash with the laity. That's not necessarily the case.
Mm.
And through the 1040s, 1050s, and 60s, and even into the mid 1070s, the clergy and the laity, and specifically the Pope and the Emperor or the King of Germany, have been cooperating in making this new church happen. So the conflict is not inevitable, and it's unusual, in fact, for there to be conflict. So so it's one thing, thing to explain in Canossa is yes, how come the Pope and the kind of king/emperor are at loggerheads when that's not their default setting.
What was there cooperation with laity outside of what we would think of as the Holy Roman Empire? I mean, was there that happening in Spain? Was that happening in, Britain? Was that happening in other places? Or is it just really kind of focused in what this amorphous thing that's like an amoeba that keeps moving called the Holy Roman Empire? Right? I mean, it never is. It always seems to be like it depends on what day you ask. We'll tell you what the map looks like. Ask me again in a year, and it may look something else different.
Okay, that's a great question. Fundamentally, I think the cooperation model is everywhere actually.
Okay.
And then we can think of this in a number of different ways. I mean, in some ways, the level of spirituality, if you like, it's in the interests of the laity that the clergy are functioning effectively. And the laity are also, it's worth mentioning monks and nuns here too.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the laity's interests that the prayers of monks, nuns, and priests and the sacrifice that priests make at the altar with the Eucharist are effective. And the laity are, crudely speaking, prepared to fund that. So that's why the laity give to found monasteries or kind of make donations to bishoprics, so they're the resources to do the work of intercession with the deity properly. And in the sense that underneath that, as it were, spiritual/moral symbiosis, they have a shared interest as landowners. And so it's in, they need to cooperate. I mean, again, kind of slightly, we're not crudely speaking, but they need to cooperate to make sure that all of their estates run properly and they're not involved in unnecessary property disputes, which is going to take them away from their core business and also, at worst, kind of potentially undermine the social order, which is in their interest to maintain. So we like to think of kind of, and Canossa has taught us to think of kind of great conflict between the church and the state, but that's in some ways an illusion, or not the default setting.
Well, it's easy to assume, right?
Exactly.
I mean, because
exactly.
it's a power struggle. You got one guy over here that says, "Hey, I've got the go straight to hell card in my pocket that I can pull out if you don't act right," and I got another one over here that says, "Yeah, but you got to function in my backyard and with my people, and so who's in charge?" That's real easy and kind of, it's not a hard dot to try to assume, right, between two entities like that. But in order, as you're saying, hey, look, it doesn't mean like there was this secret handshake that we've decided this is how we're going to do. But both of these entities, and I wouldn't say sides even, I would just say that both of these entities really understand the value that each other brings to what is its core mission, if you will. This is what we're about, the business of doing, of saving souls and doing others. And this is what we're about, the business and being able have a kingdom or a whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's value that both of us realize the other are bringing to the table, but at the same time, the old saying, maybe the rising tide lifts all ships, right? That maybe it's good for
Right.
all for us to do all of that. So maybe I'm off base, but I mean, is that
No, it's exactly right.
kind of close?
Exactly right. And I mean, since again, it's our instincts are to think institutionally, but we're the church is a big institution and the state is a big institution. Those are products of this key moment in the 11th century. We're not yet there.
Mhm.
So in that sense, kind of thinking of the social order in terms of households and families is a much kind of better way to proceed. And we might think of it, let's say, a family where maybe in this period the older son would get the family lands, the younger son might go off into the church and not produce an heir, but still be have a living because there is church property. And
Mhm.
so in that sense, there's and there, daughters might either make kind of marriages to kind of benefit the two families involved in that matchmaking, or they might
Sure.
go into monasteries where again there's a kind of a property supported living that they can make. So that it's if once we start to think in terms of families as opposed to kind of clergy or laity or church and
Uh,
state, the dynamics of how all this work kind of make a lot more sense.
You can watch the rest of Nick's interview with Conrad Leyser by clicking the View Full Interviews button on the podcast page of centerforchristianhistory.com. This Week in Christian History is produced for the Center for Christian History by Blue and Gold Media at Mississippi College in cooperation with the MC Department of Communication. For episode transcripts and more information, visit centerforchristianhistory.com. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and follow the Center for Christian History on Facebook and Instagram. Our next podcast episode is coming next week. Thank you for listening.